The 2020 hurricane season rolls on now with Tropical Depression 11 expected to become Tropical Storm Josephine within the next 36 hours. Will it continue to strengthen or weaken? Plus, will it impact us here in the United States? We're live here on Tracking the Tropics with the very latest. Hey there, everybody. JB Buno here with you live in your hurricane headquarters, being joined by Tracking the Tropics meteorologist in the top, Amanda Holly, in the top right-hand portion of your screen. And then joining us from Hagerstown, Maryland, WDVM meteorologist Scott Sumner and WDVM weather anchor Lou Scally, who will be joining us here momentarily to provide their perspective on TD11 and the 2020 hurricane season as a whole. But we want to get to the very latest on Tropical Depression 11, not Josephine yet, but expected to become Josephine in the next day or so. For the very latest, here's Tracking the Tropics meteorology, Amanda Holly at the wall with the very latest. Hey there, Amanda.
Hey everybody, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us here on Tracking the Tropics. Tropical Depression 11 continuing to move west across the Atlantic at about 14 miles per hour. Maximum sustained winds still below that tropical storm strength. And just by looking at it here on satellite, it doesn't look all that great at the moment. It's been impacted by some dry air and some shear, not allowing the storm to get organized just yet. But over the next 12 hours, we're expecting that shear to weaken just a little bit and allow the storm to get strength to become a little bit more organized and strengthen into that next tropical storm, and that name would be Josephine. Again, that would be within the next 12 hours. That is forecast at this point. But right now, we've got some of these outer level clouds trying to wrap back around. That just shows us that we are starting to see some organization of this system, and I expect it to continue over the next 48 hours. We're actually expecting some strengthening over the next 48 hours with that wind shear remaining on the lower side, and the official cone from the National Hurricane Center here does show that strengthening, potentially with wind speeds up to 60 miles per hour by as early as Friday morning, if not a little bit earlier, maybe a little bit later as well. But thereafter, we're actually expecting the storm to weaken once again. And that's because that shear that we were just talking about, it's expected to increase again. And this time it's going to increase from the southwesterly direction. So that's good news for us in the United States because, well, hopefully it will help to push the storm a little farther away from the United States. But it's also going to help to weaken the storm, if not dissipate the storm entirely by the time we get to Monday, Tuesday, and into the middle of next week. So 1 week from now. So we've got a long way to go with this system. Keep in mind it's only moving west at 14 miles an hour. It's expected to start to have a northerly component to that motion here over the next 24 hours. You can see that by the forecast models. They all agree in that general direction here. There is a little bit of spread as to how far east or west this storm may go, but in general, the general motion is expected off to the north and the west over the next 5 days through Monday. So this would put it just north of the Caribbean islands here near Puerto Rico and just north of the Dominican Republic, but still east of the Bahamas, south of Bermuda here. And after this, after Monday, most of these models still continue to recurve this out to sea. But like I said earlier, a lot of those models dissipate the storm entirely after about Sunday, Monday, and into Tuesday. So that's some good news for us. Not expecting a whole lot out of that system and not expecting impacts to the United States at this time. Right now, it's being driven by this area of high pressure in the middle of the Atlantic. It's going to continue to steer it off to the west, but there will be a break in this high pressure, in the mid-level high pressure there, and that's why we're going to see that northerly component and that recurvature. Now, if that high pressure was a little bit stronger, then we would be talking about it coming a little closer to the United States, but that doesn't really look like the case at the moment. But I wanted to dive into the shear a little bit more here just to give you an idea and a little bit more ease of mind, I guess, if you will. Over the next 48 hours here, Wednesday through about Friday morning, we're expecting that shear to weaken. That's why we're expecting the strengthening. But after that, heading into the weekend, we're expecting that wind shear to increase to likely weaken the storm, if not dissipate it entirely. So this is, again, the official forecast cone from the National Hurricane Center here. And I've just kind of noted the strength factors that we're expecting over the next 5 days. That's why we're not expecting this storm to become a hurricane at this time. Of course, stay tuned to Tracking the Tropics, and if we have any more developments, of course, we'll keep you updated. But regardless, I do think it will be our 10th named storm of the season. That would be Josephine, Tropical Storm Josephine, expected to form later today with that system. And again, we are expecting to go through all of these names on the 2020 list at this point because we have had that official forecast from the Hurricane Center be released last week Bank and Colorado State University. However, the good news is no new development is expected over the next 5 days at this time. Of course, something we're going to continue to watch, as JB, you know that the peak of hurricane season is just about a month away from now. So we're not quite there yet. We've got about 4 weeks to go until we get to that peak in the early September weeks.
Absolutely. Amanda Holly joining us here with the very latest on TD11. We want to remind our Tracking the Tropics fans out there, every week we take your questions through Facebook Live. Use one of the hashtags that you see on Facebook. It's going to be hashtag Hey Scott, hashtag Hey Lou, or as you just saw, hashtag Hey Amanda. We'll be getting to your questions in about 5 minutes' time. I want to start here, everybody, with Scott Sumner joining us from WDVM in Hagerstown, Maryland. Scott, your perspective on TD11 and just about the 2020 hurricane season, where we are as of now.
Well, I think, as Amanda just showed there very nicely, that the actual storms, thankfully, this one potentially will stay out to sea. We could have a very active season, but as long as 99.9% of those storms stay out to sea, that's fine. I think people won't really think much of it. It's obviously, but you always get that one that impacts us. Now, here locally, we're talking to you from Hagerstown, Maryland. Lou Scally will be joining you here in just a second. And as far as, we're far enough inland, but we cover pretty much down to the D.C. region and part of the coastline. And, of course, Isaias, which just came through here about a week and a half ago, gave a lot of active weather to the region. And as you'll see with regards to what an average season does usually hold, 12 named storms, 6 hurricanes, and 3 majors. Now with the upgrade, 19 to 25 is what is expected as far as named storms. Now, that seems reasonable because, let's face it, we had 3 named storms before June 1st. We already had started a fairly active season, and as Amanda mentioned, as you well know, if you're a weather geek and certainly a tropical geek, you know that the peak of hurricane season kicks in around September 11th to 12th. So we are about a month away from that, and then as we get towards the end of September and October, things slow down, or can slow down just a little bit. Lou's has been working this market for a long time, a lot longer than I have. Lou, would you say over your time here, as far as like tropical systems, we don't get direct systems, we get them indirectly. What in your memory brings about some of the worst storms that have moved into our backyard?
Well, we've had several in the past. Probably the worst I can recall was Hurricane Agnes, which is actually a tropical storm when it hit this area in 1972, caused extensive flooding on the Potomac, the Susquehanna, and also compromised the Chesapeake Bay for a couple of years as far as different production. Now, that again was back in 1972. We have had subsequent storms in the meantime, and they have also produced some rain. But by and large, because we're about 180 miles inland, we have not really seen a lot of major problems here. This year has been particularly dry. We're in a very large agricultural area. We have a lot of farms, a lot of dairy farms, a lot of vineyards. I need to get my, there I am. Let me get my shot centered there a little bit. All right, no, we went the wrong way with that. Anyway, we are, hopefully we'll get back in the shot there. But again, we're in a really agricultural area, and we needed the rain that we got from Isaias here. We picked up a couple of inches of rain, and all in all, it looks like things have greatly improved for us. Right now, though, we are currently under a flash flood watch, simply because we've had enough rain from Isaias. Plus, we've had some pretty good thunderstorms through here. Now we, of course, are at the point where we really don't need any tropical moisture to augment the corn crop or anything else. So we're hoping that Josephine does make that turn and out to sea harmlessly.
Scott Sumner, Lou Scally joining us here from WDVM in Hagerstown, Maryland, providing us with their perspective on the 2020 hurricane season, tracking the tropics, of course, keeping you and your family aware, educated, and informed on the very latest during the 2020 hurricane season. And that brings us to our Q&A portion here, everybody, with Lou, Scott, Amanda. Not really me. This is more for the meteorologist that you see here on your screen. The trio of meteorologists use the hashtags that you see on your screen. Hashtag Hey Scott, hashtag Hey Amanda, hashtag Hey Lou. Do you have a question about Tropical Depression 11? Do you have a question about what we just experienced with Hurricane and then Tropical Storm Isaias? Do you have a question about hurricane development or tropical storm development? Maybe we can, have a fun weather discussion here, similar to a classroom environment, and educate our viewers out there as to how hurricanes and tropical storms form. Again, we have 3 experts on your screen, and you can ask them a question with the hashtag #HeyScott, hashtag #HeyLou, and hashtag #HeyAmanda. The very first one comes in from Cinder Goldsmith, and it was very simple. Actually, it read hashtag #HeyJB, hi. Just letting us know that they're out there. Hashtag #HeyJB from Cinder Goldsmith, and we are going to be looking for your hashtag #HeyJB comments, or hashtag #HeyAmanda, or hashtag #HeyScott, or hashtag #HeyLou comments here momentarily. Until those comments start to come in, tracking the tropics meteorologist Amanda Holly back with us in the Stream Center. Hey there, Amanda.
Hey, JB. I kind of wanted to go into that forecast a little bit more. Last week, we talked about the Colorado State University numbers. Well, on Thursday, NOAA released their numbers, and they were in agreement for some of the same reasons that we were going to have an extremely active season. I just wanted to talk about a couple different quotes that were in that document that came out from the National Hurricane Center from NOAA here. And this comment coming from the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross, and it says that this is one of the most active seasonal forecasts that NOAA has produced in the 22-year history of hurricane outlook. So that should give you some perspective as to what these numbers mean. Now, they do, of course, note, as all meteorologists note, that, just because we may have 24 named storms does not mean all 24 will impact land, or even one will impact land. The land forecasting is very difficult, and they note that when we talk about these cones, it's more, it's based off of the weather patterns that are ongoing, not those long range models that the forecasters are looking at for months ahead. But when we're talking about specific storms like Tropical Depression 11, we're looking at where those high pressures are and where the fronts are and those kinds of steering currents. But regardless, 24 named storms is a lot, and we have seen 9 named storms so far, and Scott and Lou, you guys were impacted, obviously, by Isaias there, and it brought a lot of rain, a lot of wind, and that was just the beginning. Of course, the peak of hurricane season just 1 month away from now, and we expect these storms to get larger, stronger, and longer lived, and that is according to NOAA here with their latest forecast.
Right, Amanda. Yeah, absolutely. The water temperature has gone up. Now, the one thing that maybe helpful to counteract a little bit, we have a product with our Barron system that shows the Sahara dust coming off the coast of Africa. That's another thing that, and I believe you alluded to that when you were showing the graphics earlier, is the fact that, the Sahara dust, the dry air that comes off the coast of west coast of Africa, it's like oil and water. It doesn't doesn't help develop tropical systems. Tropical systems are warm core. From the surface all the way up to the top of the cloud itself and the storm itself. And so, when you get that, it's not likely for a system, if it gets entrenched within some Sahara dust, not likely to develop, even if there are very warm waters there. The other thing, as you mentioned, too, again, the wind shear. Now, the reason also, too, I was looking at a couple of things, and I think you mentioned on this, too, is the point that the wind shear is going to lessen a little bit out towards the Pacific, lessen here in the Atlantic, and the cooler waters off the Pacific are going to help to enhance some of that lessening, and more of a La Nina instead of an El Nino pattern. So we could, again, we'll be watching at this point in time. Usually at the beginning of the tropical season, you look at the Gulf of Mexico, around the Caribbean, around the Florida coastline, for strong development or some sort of development. But now is the time you look out towards the coast of Africa, more so, before we bring that active period and where you see more storms develop across the Caribbean Sea later in the season. But it's interesting to note that they do the upgrades. I believe it's twice a year. They start off in May. They do an upgrade half season. And that was it's a pretty good jump there, right? Would you say, from what we saw earlier? I mean, not that it wasn't a very active forecast to begin with, but it's even elevated itself from what we saw earlier in May.
I was surprised by that jump. Lou, do you want to jump in here too as well? It was a big jump in both the CSU and the NOAA's forecast there midway through hurricane season.
Indeed, it was. And of course, here in this area, we are very concerned, as you are in Florida, with our business of recreation at our ocean beaches here in Maryland. We only have a small section of ocean, Ocean City, and it's only a few miles long, and it's part of the Delmarva Beach area. But it is very important to the economy of this region. And of course, with COVID-19, they unfortunately have not had a very good year. And anytime the coast gets roughed up, as it did with Isaias, it certainly bites into the economy around here. So we're looking forward to hopefully none of these storms causing any more compromise to the shore, because our Atlantic beaches are very important to the overall economy, which has taken a hit this year overall. Scott, I know that you have been tracking many of these storms for the last couple of years, but do you have one in mind that was particularly the roughest one to predict where it was going to end up?
Well, it was tricky. I have to say, back in 2016, Matthew, I was down in Savannah at that point in time, and it was, we were really on edge. We got brushed by Matthew. Yes, there was damage, obviously, so quite a bit of damage actually, but could have been a lot worse as Matthew brushed the coast. We were nonstop for, I would say, I think it was 2.5 days. Covering the storm, and actually, we were very, very fortunate. That's one storm that sticks in my mind. Another one, I'd have to go back when I was in North Carolina, eastern North Carolina, in Greenville in particular. There was a system, and I want to say it was in the very busy active hurricane season of 2005. Where, and I'm trying to remember for the life of me the name of the storm, but it stayed out at sea and meandered for days on days and days. And I'll never forget the news director wanting us to break into coverage, just giving an update, and yet it was hundreds and hundreds of miles away from our area. And yeah, we ended up breaking in, and it never really impacted us too much in where I was in Greenville, but it was one of those storms that you just, all right, it's formed, hit us or don't hit us. It was one of those things. We didn't want to spend like a week and a half just trying to see it spin out and spiral out. And again, I apologize, I forget the name of that storm, but I believe it was in 2005. So
Scott Sumner and Lou Scally joining us here from WDVM in Hagerstown, Maryland. You see on the center of your screen, everybody, it's time for our meteorologist Q&A using the hashtags on your screen. We're going to be asking questions to our meteorologists that you have on screen, Amanda Holly, Scott Sumner, and Lou Scally. And it brings us to the very first one coming in here from Tom Columbati from WFLA's Facebook page in Tampa. Hashtag, hey Amanda, I feel like Labor Day weekends are cursed for Tampa Bay. Is there stats on that for us? And while we don't have this ready, I want to hear Amanda's perspective here about Labor Day weekends in Tampa Bay.
It's an interesting question. As JB said, I don't have the specific stats on how many hurricanes or tropical storms have impacted the Tampa Bay on Labor Day. But I do remember Labor Day of last year, and that was Dorian impacting the Bahamas. So, Labor Day is definitely a lot closer to that peak of hurricane season. So we would be talking about more named storms regardless during that time period. Maybe that's why it sticks out to you a little bit, but I'll keep that in my pocketbook, and I'll do some research on that and have that detail for you next week.
The next question that we have coming in is for weather anchor Lou Scally, joining us here from WDVM. And it's hashtag Hey Lou from Cinder Goldsmith from here on WFLA's Facebook page in Tampa. Hashtag Hey Lou, what's going on with the wave behind it? Now, we're, of course, very, very honed in on Tropical Depression 11. Not exactly sure. Maybe, Amanda, you can hop in here and give us some perspective on whether or not there's a wave behind TD11 we should be keeping an eye on here. And then Lou will ask you, of course, the same question.
Sure, yeah. I mean, we're always tracking those tropical waves, right, Lou, that are coming off the coast of Africa. They usually come off the coast every 3 to 5 days or so. Sometimes we have a more active season. Sometimes they come off more frequently than that. And then sometimes we have slower seasons. But regardless, we kind of have to watch every single wave. Some of them will develop and some of them will not. Right now, the National Hurricane Center not tracking any potential new development over the next 5 days. So that's some good news, but that can change with, every update that we get from hour to hour. Lou?
Well, we're in the Weather Center every day before we start prepping for the shows. We're always on the National Hurricane Center site, always seeing what's new and what the potential for the next event's going to be. And as of right now, nothing shaking as far as anything too earth shaking, but obviously the season is but young. we've seen some major player storms around here in the November. So we certainly will not drop our guard yet.
All right, the next question that we have coming in is for meteorologist Scott Sumner. Bobby Curtis Shehorn joining us from Alabama on WKRG's Facebook page down there on the Gulf Coast. Hashtag, hey, Scott, do we have a La Nina yet? For Scott Sumner, the floor is yours.
Well, I tell you, Bobby, thank you for that question. It looks like, as I mentioned before, with some of that cooler Eastern Pacific water, that a La Nina is certainly in the works here. You have different variations. You have a mild La Nina, you have a strong La Nina, and in this case, it looks like we might have kind of leaning a little bit, maybe more towards a stronger La Nina due to the water temperature out in the Pacific, and thereby helping to possibly enhance. And this is another thing too. You'll notice every year that the Atlantic is very active, the Pacific is not active. And when the Pacific is very active or starts out very active, the Atlantic usually isn't too active. So there's something there, obviously. And, when you're talking about El Nino and La Nina, those are, systems that are affecting globally. It's certainly takes a little bit more time, I guess, for things to develop and fall into line.
Right. It takes time for us to go from El Nino to neutral, then to La Nina, and we're kind of in that transition phase right now. A lot of the models do suggest, and those sea surface temperature anomalies do suggest that we will be heading into La Nina over the next couple of months. That's one of the reasons why we could see a more active season.
The next question coming in here from Casey Cole from KARK's Facebook page in Arkansas. Hashtag, hey, Amanda, why do you think that it's going to be such a big year in storms? Amanda Holly?
This is a big question that we get every week on Tracking the Tropics. And I mean, all of the factors that we talk about when we talk about storm formation, well, they're all kind of coming together this season. One of those factors being that La Nina developing. When we have La Nina in the Pacific, that means there are weaker winds in the Atlantic, allowing those storms to get more organized, allowing those tropical waves that we just talked about to organize better. We have really, really warm waters out there, and that's one of the main ingredients for tropical storm formation. I think one of the articles mentioned that we have the 4th warmest sea surface temperatures on record since we began keeping those records. That's some really warm waters out there. And yes, we've had a lot of Saharan dust, but that is expected to kind of taper off as we go into the rest of August and into September. That's normal for that to taper off, and that allows those storms to form a little bit more as well. We've had some very low wind shear, and we're expected to continue to lessen that wind shear as we get into the next couple of months. So again, all of these factors kind of coming together for the perfect storm, if you will.
I see what you did there.
Unfortunately, right? But again, we hope that most of these storms form out in the Atlantic and do what is expected to be Josephine is expected to do and kind of recurve out to sea. And there is the potential for that to happen.
Again, being joined here by Scott Sumner, Lou Scally, Amanda Holly. You can ask your questions with the 3 hashtags that you see on your screen, everybody. I want to get the next question that's coming in here, and it's for meteorologist Scott Sumner there in this is a great question that we have from Brad Cohen from WDVM's Facebook page in Maryland. Your Facebook page, you guys. Hashtag, hey, Scott, from Brad. How does the local radar look currently? And is there any chance for thunderstorms in the forecast today? So Brad here would like a very, very brief look, and we can't give them a look at the radar there in Hagerstown, but just a very brief forecast, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely, Brad. It looks like we have a little bit of an instability trough in the area. We also have a cold front that's dropping on in, and that's going to help spark some thunderstorm activity this afternoon going into tonight. And unfortunately, the front is not going to clear the coast. It looks like it's going to be sticking around for a couple of days. So we can expect more thunderstorms, more wet weather on and off your typical afternoon diurnal thunderstorms on Thursday as well as Friday, and really possibly even heading into the weekend, Brad.
Got it.
Happy to report there's nothing shaking right now on the radar. We're in good shape.
Yeah, there you go.
but things are very active down to the south, and we're thinking that once that front starts to work its way through the area and stalls on top, we could have quite a bit of rain here later today and into the rest of the week.
Mm-hmm.
All right, getting to some more of your questions here, everybody, on Tracking the Tropics. Just a few more, everybody, while we have some time here in the remainder of our episode this Wednesday, August 12th, 2020, part of your coverage for the 2020 hurricane season for Nexstar Nation, our television stations across the country, and that's where we're plucking these questions on Facebook Live from. Heather Wentz is joining us from WNCT's Facebook page in North Carolina. Heather Rouse Wentz. Hashtag, hey Amanda, I just joined. Do you think that Josephine will hit North Carolina either as a tropical storm or as a hurricane? And we should remind Heather and the rest of our viewers here that while the bottom of the screen we've been showing the name Josephine, this is not a named storm yet. This is still Tropical Depression 11, expected to become Josephine in the next day and a half or so. But what do we say here for Heather, Amanda?
Yeah, good to point out there, JB. Not Josephine just yet, but it's likely to become Josephine over the next 12 hours. And right now, at this point, I do not expect what should become Josephine to impact North Carolina. Heather, I can understand, though, you know, with you guys just being impacted by Isaias, you would be a little bit on edge here at this point, but this storm in particular looks like it will be recurving out to sea. It may not even survive beyond Monday, so that is something to look out for over the next couple of days. Watch for those continuing updated forecasts. At this point, the storm is expected to weaken by Sunday and into Monday. We'll continue to watch it after that, but a lot of models actually dissipate this storm before it even kind of makes its way closer to Bermuda. So something we'll keep an eye on. At this point, though, no. As of Wednesday afternoon, no.
Very far out there TD11 is as far as the Atlantic Ocean. We're always keeping an eye on storms here on Tracking the Tropics. That's of course, what we do here in your hurricane headquarters, but TD11 still a ways away from impacting us here in the southeastern United States. The very final question that we have coming in, everybody, it is for Lou Scally. It's from Renee Elizabeth Davis from WFLA's Facebook page in Florida. And this is a long comment here that we had to kind of trim just a little bit to fit on screen, Renee, so hopefully you forgive us. But I'll read it here for you. Hashtag, hey Lou, I live in Maine. Our weather has been totally crazy this summer, feeling like we live in Florida versus New England. Are we more likely to see more of this due to climate change in the future, as well as are we more apt to get more hurricanes? So Renee joining us from Maine and wanting to know the answer to this question, Lou.
Well, good afternoon, Renee. I think all of us, the longer you live, the wackier the weather turns out to be. If you are a young person, then your perspective only goes back a few years. I've seen some really wacky weather in the last 40 years doing the weather here at WDVM. But indeed, the trend seems to be that a lot of these storms are not bothering the Gulf Coast area, but ending up in the Atlantic Ocean and along the coastal area. So I think this is, at least for the foreseeable future, the trend has been for the northeastern states, at least, to get a piece of the action, whether it's a tropical storm or just a dissipating tropical area. But again, the latest spaghetti models there on the latest storm potentially will make it at least impact New England a little bit. But as far as climate change, I'm not sure, Scott. I defer that one to you.
Climate change, I mean, one of those subjects. How long do you have, folks? I mean, do you have the next hour to spend with us here? Because we could dive into climate change. I'm sure Amanda could present us with some knowledge, with some logic, some sciences. I'm sure that the two of you could from WDVM. Scott Sumner and Lou Scally joining us here, everybody, on Tracking the Tropics. We'll, of course, be keeping a close eye on TD11 and your hurricane headquarters here in Tampa, Florida, and be using our meteorologists across the country. We have meteorologists joining us from different cities, more than 100 cities across the country, including in Hagerstown, Maryland, where WDVM is. Just one of the many resources that we have as part of our parent company, Nexstar Nation, as we bring you the very latest on the 2020 hurricane season, tapping into that resource of meteorologist knowledge from across the United States. We've had meteorologists on the show from Hawaii. I mean, really, in the entire span of Nexstar Nation being used here to bring you the very, very latest expertise on what we can expect with these storms as they get closer to us here in the United States. We'll keep a very close eye on TD11. Whether or not it becomes Tropical Storm Josephine remains to be seen. We expect it to do so in the next 24 to 36 hours. Will it strengthen? Will it weaken? Will it have a roller coaster journey towards the United States? Will it ever even hit us? We'll keep you posted here on Tracking the Tropics as we continue to monitor the 2020 hurricane season from your Hurricane headquarters. Everybody, for Amanda Holly, Scott Sumner, and Lou Scally, of course, the two gentlemen on the left side of your screen joining us from Hagerstown, Maryland. We appreciate them joining us. I'm JB Buno. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time, everybody, on Tracking the Tropics. We stream 2 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Central on the app, website, or television station's social media pages that you have here on your screen. And we'll be back, of course, with regular updates with more name storms as they become available. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching Tracking the Tropics.